dogs. But if we're just doing these things to animals for the sake of, because we enjoy the taste of their flesh or of their eggs and we want to get them more cheaply than we would if we didn't do this to them, why is that better than getting pleasure from watching them fight? It's not really obvious why we should privilege things we do for the pleasures of the taste rather than things we do for the enjoyment of watching a spectator sport, whether it's dog fighting or bullfighting or something of that sort. Okay, so that really, I think, summarizes what I want to say about the ethical arguments against factory farm products. I think everything on this slide I've already said. So, as far as questions of ethics and the status of animals is concerned, I'll leave it there for now. I have some other things to go through, and the question of vegetarianism and veganism I will come to before I finish, or we'll have time for questions. But this, I think, is really, in a way, the most important of the ethical conclusions, because this affects so much of the animal products that we consume. Okay, let me move then to some of the environmental impacts. Animal agriculture, particularly factory farming, is the major source of water pollution in this country. And water pollution is a major problem because it affects a very large proportion of our rivers. It means that rivers that people used to be able to enjoy as recreational rivers, to swim in or whatever, are now too polluted. And further, the pollution actually collects in the Mississippi from all of the Midwest and the South, and flows through the Mississippi into the Gulf of Mexico, where it causes a vast dead zone, hundreds of square miles of area, in which no fish live, and which has devastated fisheries around the Gulf of Mexico and caused that loss to the fish, to these species, as well as to people who were relying on them. Many of them, of course, much poorer than we are. So this is an example of the way in which factory farms typically control their manure. They just collect it in what they call a lagoon. I thought lagoons used to be those sparkling blue things around coral islands. This is basically, this is really a cesspit of manure that just sits there and may eventually be scooped out and put on fields, but the problem is that they put it on the fields too thickly because it's too costly to move far enough away, and so it still ends up running off into the rivers when it rains. Also, every now and again you get really unexpectedly heavy rain in an area, and then the lagoons may break and just all the contents empty into the rivers. That's happened in many times in many different states, killing millions of fish and sometimes spreading tens of miles downstream. This shows you just the size of some of these intensive farms. You saw the picture of the pigs inside one of these sheds, or a shed like this. Now you have a look at each one of these is a big long shed, and here's an area that has what is that, 9 sheds or something just here. So you can imagine the thousands of pigs confined in this area, all of their waste going into this lagoon before getting sprayed on the fields. And there's another one. And this is just one little cluster of these sheds. There's another one up here. There's another lagoon with other sheds out of the picture. There's another set there. So it's a vast process with a huge amount of manure coming out of it. If it's well handled and all goes well, it could be okay from an environmental point of view, but obviously it's a problem if things do not go that well. Also, of course, they're not very pleasant neighbours when the wind is blowing from them to you, and you have a lot of people in areas, in states where there's a lot of hog farms in particular, who feel that their places have been ruined because somebody set up a hog farm and the smell is just very strong on a day when the wind blows it your way. Okay, let's talk a bit about climate change. This is a cattle feedlot. Again, these things are very, very large. As compared to the other forms of factory farming you saw, it's not nearly as crowded. The animals do get to move around, there's bits of space, and so on. So that's better. But the problem with cattle, and particularly, well, the problem with actually with, as I'll say, with all kinds of cattle production is the impact on climate change, which we've become increasingly aware of. So the question that I'll raise, particularly with this one, is the fact that in order to feed these cattle, obviously they're not on grass, they're not feeding themselves from grass, we have to produce food to bring it to them. So we're growing grain on our arable land. We are then, and of course that uses quite a lot of fossil fuel because US agriculture is very mechanized, there's a lot of fuel used in sowing and harvesting and processing. Then we truck the grain to the cattle, and the cattle then eat it and get fattened from it. But cattle are not well suited to eating grain. It's not their natural diet, obviously. So they waste most of the food value